Good morning, welcome to the video discussion for Saturday, August 31st. We're going to focus primarily on Hurricane Dorian. Now, Dorian is a major hurricane with winds of 145 miles per hour. Moving to the west at 12 miles per hour, it has increased in speed just a little bit. And that's really important to consider, okay? Just keep that in the back of your mind. And we have a pressure down to 944 millibars, an impressive drop. It was 970 millibars at 5 p.m. yesterday. Dropped down to about 947 millibars as of late yesterday evening, like around 8-9 p.m. And then it has dropped down to 944 millibars now. So clearly our hurricane is strengthening. It's very impressive. Category 4 hurricane. It's currently 445 miles to the east of West Palm Beach, Florida, and 280 miles to the east of northwestern Bahamas. Everyone's focused on the track here. Now, everyone is noticing it's going to turn north and hey, it's going to miss Florida. No, bad. That's not the way to look at this thing, okay? So let me be very, very clear here, okay? Just because the center of the hurricane does not push onto the coast, and again, notice that the cone here is still right on eastern Florida here. It could certainly continue to just inch a little bit closer and do one of this, you know, so it still can make landfall on the Florida Peninsula. But let's just, for argument's sake, say it misses the Florida coast. It takes a hard right and turns up north, and or should I say hard left and turns up north, and basically it misses the center, the eye wall, the little center. That doesn't mean that the whole hurricane's influence here, including, by the way, there's king tide going on here, so you still have major coastal flooding and you have heavy rainfall, and by the way, you could still have an intensifying major hurricane, maybe category 5 strength, possible, pushing along the coastline here, not weakening in any way, shape, or form, with just a constant onslaught as this is moving incredibly slowly along the Florida coast. So anyone that looks at this and says, oh, it's going to miss, or the threat for a direct impact on Florida decreases. No, it's not. It's not. This is a major hurricane with growing in size that's going to be slowly moving right off of your coastline, creating all sorts of havoc with coastal flooding, major storm surge, heavy rainfall, 10-20 inches of rain. Oh yeah, no big deal. So yeah, definitely if you have any friends or family on the eastern side of Florida, and let's just go with Georgia and South Carolina as well, and even up towards North Carolina, and yeah, I'm going to make the case further north as well, you should start getting prepared. Now, that doesn't mean act, you know, don't overreact, don't get hysterical. Be calm, be relaxed, and prepare. Board up your homes, get your supplies, and know your evacuation routes. Be calm and collected, because hysteria leads to a lot of mistakes and a lot of bad situations. So just stay calm. You got a couple days here. You can got a holiday weekend, so you have a chance to exhale and prepare. Now, before we go look at the model guidance, what we're going to do is this. The public section of this video, I'm going to go look at all the satellite pictures, okay? And I'm going to explain to you what I am watching for, because we could look at models all day, okay? That's really not going to tell the story here. So I'm going to explain the story here, and then for the premium part of this video, which you can subscribe at NYNJPA Weather for a subscription, or you can also subscribe to Weather Concierge for a full year, with not only a consultation from myself, but also meteorologist Tom Moore, meteorologist Aaron Budin, and more. So definitely, you can definitely choose that if you want to get even more information as far as what the model data is showing. But this morning, we're just going to focus on the satellite pictures, because I think they tell you more about what's going on here than all the models you could possibly put together. We could look at models all day and night. Doesn't matter, okay? What matters is what's happening right now. And what is happening right now is this hurricane is very impressive. Now, what we have here, okay, we have a nice central dense overcast, well-defined eye, very nice outflow. There's a little bit of shear, a little bit of dry air on the northwestern side here, okay, and that is because our high pressure ridge, which has been strengthening, is starting to show signs of eroding just a little bit. And that is a very interesting evolution in this pattern. These little signals tell you, okay, how strong are these short waves that are going to be influencing this pattern that we're going to be taking a look at from the plains. And believe me, if you ask people in the plains based on the thunderstorms that developed out there, they're pretty vigorous. So what you have going on here is, first of all, the fact that it's picked up speed is important, because the faster it's moving now, the more energy is going to be exerted to slow down this hurricane. And that's a very important factor. So that's something that what you call chaos, and that's why you can't always trust these models 100%. Okay, and that's why you don't say, oh look, the center's off the coast, so it's no big deal. No, that's why I made that point very clear. The fact this is picking up speed a little bit right now doesn't mean it won't stall and slow down. It just means that it's going to take longer for that process to happen. So if it takes longer for that process to happen, that means it can get to the coast a little bit closer. Okay? Meanwhile, we're seeing pretty good evolution here in the central dense overcast. You're seeing a little bit of warming here going on right here. Now that tells me that we might start seeing some eye wall replacement cycles, which means we're going to see fluctuation in the strength. So if you see that, oh look, Dorian has weakened, and people make a big deal about that on social media, or should I say the media. Listen, media more likely is more prone to doing that. That doesn't mean that this hurricane isn't dangerous, first of all, or more importantly, it doesn't mean it can't strengthen again. These eye wall cycles that typically start to develop here in these major hurricanes leads to rises and dips, but it's kind of like a step ladder. Sometimes it dips down, then it really shoots up, then it dips down again, and it shoots up again. So it kind of supports a threat here where you can go where the winds drop down maybe to category 3, then jump up to a high category 4, down to a low category 4, up to a category 5, and back and forth again, depending on the wall cycle, recyclization process, also little pockets of dry air that it might encounter, a little cold pocket of water, which, by the way, anyone who's going to be running around screaming climate change, water here is actually slightly below normal. Still more than warm enough to support a major hurricane. But before anyone starts running around screaming that out, could we get the storm to actually, I don't know, go past, and we can focus on people being impacted before you start your propaganda? Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, we're seeing all sorts of signals here. And one thing that's very interesting too is how this aspect is now full circle. It's certainly circular, but you can notice that clearly on the northwestern side it's not able to completely vent out because of some of that shear. So one thing I would be watching out for is to see whether or not these higher cloud tops start to expand, which might be a sign for another period of intensification once we get past this little period of downbursting, intensification, or I guess you say a little bit of weakening that might be taking place here, but still very powerful hurricane. So what is going to be a major influence in this whole forecast? Well, when we take a look at the water vapor satellite picture, here's our ridge very clearly. It's a little pocket of dry air that I was talking about right there, and then you see this very impressive shortwave here is going to be diving and continuing to carve out what is a very impressive trough for this time of year. Okay, now when you get these short waves and you get this type of convective development here, it leads again to a word I'm going to be saying frequently, which is chaos. It leads to enhancement in the vertical lifting in the atmosphere. And think of it like kind of like where if you have one of those spin tops and someone pressed down it to make it go a little faster, you know, the old ones where you just press down, pump it up, and it spins faster and faster. Well, let's just say someone just decided to press the pump and spin this up a little bit faster. So as a result, it leads to a stronger influence in our trough, and that's why we're seeing the model guidance start to react so vigorously with stalling and turning north. So first, let me explain the stalling process. The stalling process is because this ridge is going to be getting eroded away, and so basically what you end up with is kind of this vacuum in terms of steering currents. So basically there really aren't any strong winds either way to move this thing, okay? So it just kind of sits here, and being such a major hurricane, it kind of creates its own environment over the Bahamas, and just kind of sits and waits and says, I got no reason to move. It's warm water. It's very nice. I heard the tourism is very nice in the Bahamas. I'm going to hang out here. Unfortunately, it's going to lead to a lot of destruction in the Bahamas, so if you have any friends and family out there, I'd get out of there now, all right? So it's going to sit out here and spin, waiting for something to pick it up. Kind of like a guy waiting for the bus to show up for the New Jersey Transit, which might take some time. So it sits out here and spins around on Sunday and Monday until something like this comes in and kind of hooks onto it and starts to tug it northward. Meanwhile, you have your nice little vigorous trough here over southeastern Canada, and this shortwave right here starts to dig it out a little bit faster. But what is going to be the primary factor that's going to tell us whether this hurricane comes in towards the Carolina coast, tracks up into the mid-Atlantic, maybe skirts through North Carolina and cuts up along the New Jersey coast, or just kind of curves out and then heads out in the Atlantic, never really making landfall but creating all sorts of problems from Florida on up through the Carolinas, eastern Carolinas. So what's going to be the primary influence? Well, you have to go to the Pacific. That right there, that shortwave right there is what's going to be key. And we're waiting for a full sampling. We're starting to get a full sampling of what this little shortwave is going to be. That's why we saw people from Canada all the way to the West Coast putting out extra soundings here to get extra balloons just to get a better idea of what we're dealing with in this 500 millibar pattern. But this little spinning shortwave that is off of British Columbia may have a very, very important factor in where this hurricane goes by the time we get to the middle of next week. Okay? So that's going to be the question here. When this comes in and dives into the Rockies here, okay, so there it is out there. It goes over the ridge, comes in. We have a trough that's already established. It's carved out deeper because of this shortwave. Comes in, captures the hurricane as it is inching its way northward, and then the speed will increase and pushes up this way. That's why we're seeing this forecast. So basically what this is telling us is that it's moving along, it slows down, it enters the weakness, then it starts to feel the influence of that very strong convective anomaly that's set up in the plains to carve out our trough. This is where the weakness is located, so it goes right into the weakness because storms tend to move in areas where that is the weakest in terms of movement. So here is our conduit, and that is why we are also watching where this cold front ends up. So on the surface map it shows up even greater. So here's our surface low. Tracks in, and then it starts to interact with these frontal boundaries, and the question is, where does that weakness set up along the southeast coast? And then that will tell us where this storm will track. So we have a lot to work out here, but I just want to make a video making it very clear that this storm, okay, which is starting to grow in size, just because this part doesn't end up on your shoreline doesn't mean that all of this part isn't going to create a lot of problems for you, okay? So I want to make that very clear that just because you see this forecast of it staying off the coast does not mean that eastern Florida is in for a world of hurt for early next week, okay? Early this coming week. You get what I mean. So I just want to make that very clear because I'm seeing that way too much on social media. As far as what type of impacts it can have for the rest of the East Coast, again, it really relies on what happens with that disturbance coming in, diving south, and capturing our hurricane. In my opinion, I'm certainly preparing, I would say from southern New England down through Georgia, I would prepare, not overreact, but just prepare. Have your supplies checked. You really should anyway. And then we'll watch this very carefully. And basically, with that interaction, it could do three things. One, it kicks it off like a soccer ball and heads it out into the Atlantic. Two, it starts to interact, but it's now full phase. So we get a weakening tropical system lifting up the mid-Atlantic coast and then curving out at some point. All right. Or my biggest concern is that we see a full phase between this tropical low and that polar shortwave, and what you get is a major subtropical storm developing around the mid-Atlantic coastal waters here, which would be a real mess for basically the I-95 corridor. Okay, that's why in the forecast today I'm keeping heavy rain and strong winds in place for the forecast on Thursday and Friday, and likely for Saturday too, as the moisture runs up along that stationary boundary and you get that mess heading up the East Coast. My hope is that this kicks it out, because what you end up with is a positively tilted trough. It kicks it right out and we have no problems. Well, for the most part, at least around here in the mid-Atlantic. But the southeast coast, any way you slice it, this is going to be a mess for the upcoming week. So I would prepare accordingly. Following up, now we'll jump to the premium video discussion coming up now.